Good morning, everyone. It's Katie again. It's Monday morning, and this is your check in for Module 3, in which we talk about power. It's a pretty big module, and we introduce the idea of intersectionality also in this module. Power and intersectionality can't be separated, of course. In intersectional analyses, power is one of the main things that we look at. And as a feminist or doing feminist research, power is always at the front of your mind. Who has it? Who doesn't have it? Who gets to develop it? Who's left out of it? What power when? In what context do people have power, and which contexts do people not have power? Can you have power in one context, power not in no power in another context? So power is a very complex thing to talk about, but it permeates all feminist discourse. It would be a mistake to think about power mainly in terms of our sexual relationships, male female, or patriarchal power as something that exists in a binary. Power exists for all kinds of reasons, religious reasons, personal reasons, political reasons, economic reasons, on and on and on. And it works in networks. So you don't have power usually in a very, very small setting. Usually that power connects to other powers, whether you hold the most power or not. So let me talk just a bit about what I've been seeing in Module 1 and 2 discussion groups. And I'm very happy that people are interested in what they're reading in terms of content and interested in discussing ideas like Butler's piece on gender. That got a lot of discussion. And some of you are kind of struggling with the idea of sex not being not predetermining gender. And we've talked about some languages where there is only one word for sex and gender. I discovered that in Germany, actually, when I was asked to make a presentation at the United Nations a United Nations session on women in technology. So that was a revolution to me, and I really had to go back and think about it. We have noted that Judith Butler, who's very difficult to read, by the way, very challenging. So good for you. Um, comes comes at it, at least in the piece that you saw, from a white Eurocentric feminist perspective, and doesn't really consider the ideas of intersectionality. So I urge you to pursue her. She's all over YouTube. Take a look and see what her later works have addressed, and whether or not intersectionality begins to be something that sneaks into her discourse. Excuse me. I don't know what I just did there, but it looks like we're still running. So I'll keep going. Okay, so in Module 1, you got acquainted with each other, and I can see that you're beginning to respond to each other. And that's excellent because it's best if you respond to each other rather than me or Stephanie doing all the responding. I did a lot of responding in Module 1 and in Module 2, but I'm going to start to withdraw a little bit that from that in Module 3 and ask you to respond to each other, challenge each other, offer each other links to other resources. I notice some of you are doing that already, and that's really excellent. So this module ends on May the 18th, and then Module 4 will open. Thank you very much to those of you who've been finding mistakes in the dates, opening and closing dates, and so on. As I said before, this course it, is premised, not premised, that's not the right word. Uh, what I've done is adapted this course from earlier years, and that's what we do in each term is we adapt the course from the earlier term because the design of it is set. So that means going in and changing a lot of dates, and inevitably I missed a few. So I do apologize for that, and thank you very much for pointing it out. For those of you that can't find your group assignments, please go to the latest posting for group assignments and take a look there. I'm going to make sure, I'm going to go in right after this video and make sure that if it's posted in more than one place, that the most recent version is there for you. So what you need to do now is you need to go into your groups and talk among yourselves and choose a group name, and let me know what your group name is, and I will change that label so that your group name, you can go right to your group name. Let me read you just a little bit about power. I could read you quite a lot of Foucault, who was not a feminist researcher, but he really, in terms of post-structuralism, talked a lot about power and really sort of grounded the debate and kind of predicted how the discourse was going to go forward in terms of power. So he looked, for example, at the power of the state in sexuality and sexual relations. He looked at the power of the state for those in incarceration, and in a number of other ways. He was French, and he wrote originally in French. So translated again, the texts are pretty dense, and they're challenging to read. But if you want to read the original Foucault, go for it. There are also lots of books on understanding Foucault, for example, if you find that you want to pursue Foucault. But let me read you a little bit here from this book, Intersectionality, Patricia Hill Collins and Sylvia Bilge. And Patricia Hill Collins you will encounter a lot when we're talking about intersectionality, as well as Kimberly Crenshaw. And I'm going to post a link to a video of Kimberly Crenshaw, or several videos, in which she talks about intersectionality. She really kind of coined that phrase, although it's not a new idea. It actually, some people say it emerged from the Combahee River Collective in the 70s, but you can really trace it back to Sojourner Power in the Civil War, and her very famous speech called "Ain't I a Woman?" So again, I urge you to take a look at those. I'll post some links for you. So, power, another core idea of intersectionality, is complex and contested. Throughout this book, okay, I'm going to skip that. Intersectionality strives to look at power from many angles and asks what kind of power relationships might be hidden behind those that are more apparent in a given context. We conceptualize power as a relationship rather than as a static entity. Power is not a thing to be gained or lost, as in the zero-sum conceptions of winners and losers on the playing field, but it's exercised via the relationships that created the very categories of winners and losers. Intersecting power relations permeate important global phenomena. Those that oppress, for example, global social inequality and violence, as well as political actions that resist or oppose such oppression. For example, social protests that flare up in various national settings, ongoing social movements that evolve as they engage global phenomena, and digital media as new resources for oppressive and emancipatory uses. And I'm sure you can think of some that have had a great deal of power, like Me Too and Black Lives Matter. And you can take a look at the protests that started in Iran. Although the authorities there are doing their very, very best to repress those protests and silence people by executing them, for example, they continue to grow, and they're spreading across the globe. These global phenomena permeated by intersecting power relations are also variably impacted by the rise of far-right populism, as we see, of course, in the States, across Europe, and sadly here in Alberta and in other places in Canada. It's kind of sneaking in. Far-right populism speaks to important changes in our current conjuncture and encompasses the very real menace of fascism. This power-conscious lens raises two important points about intersecting power relations and the political responses they can engender. First, intersectional frameworks understand power relations through a lens of mutual construction, and we saw that in both modules 1 and 2. In other words, people's lives and identities are generally shaped by many factors in diverse and mutually influencing ways. So we're shaped, and in turn, we shape. Race, class, gender, sexuality, age, disability, ethnicity, nation, and religion, among others, constitute interlocking, mutually constructing, or interacting systems of power. As categories of analysis, race, gender, sexuality, class, and nation gain meaning from power relations of racism, heterosexism, class exploitation, and nationalism. Within intersectional frameworks, there is no pure racism or heterosexism. Rather, power relations of racism and heterosexism gain meaning in relation to one another. So this idea of networks of power, intersecting networks. Second, power relations are to be analyzed both via their intersections, for example, of racism and heterosexism, as well as across domains of power, namely structural, disciplinary, cultural, and interpersonal. The framework of domains of power provides a heuristic device or thinking tool for examining power relations. So this is from Kimberly Crenshaw's theoretical musings. We can't just look at intersecting relations of power from the point of view of sociology, for example, or from the point of view of my relations with other deans, or my relations with my husband, or my relations with my grandchildren even. So you need to look at those relations, but you need to look more broadly. Where are those relations situated, for example? In what contexts do they occur? So power, key idea in this course, and a key idea all the way through women's and gender studies. And I hope you enjoy the resources. And some of you are undertaking your first challenges. Please go for it. Don't forget, you can only do one challenge from one module. So although you do two challenges, you have to pick those challenges from different modules. Thank you very much for your attention, and have fun with Module 3.